Hello everyone and welcome back to Kerbal's space program. As you can see, we are coming right in on another drone mission. I've been doing quite a few of these off camera just to build up some funds, but I figured I'd bring you in for this one and show it to you because there are actually some relatively interesting things that happen. So here we are speeding off towards the mountains just behind the Kerbal Space Center. They are actually quite annoying. I don't know if any veteran players in the game may have lost a couple craft or two smacking into the peaks of these mountains when they'd hoped they'd be able to clear it, but alas, we're not able to. So there was just me grabbing some science from the new biome. Oh, and obviously, of course, this is our very first recording in post-production. That's right. This is not being recorded live. I'm recording this separately, and this is probably how most recordings for Global Space Program will be going, just simply because it is a lot easier and a lot more efficient to do it this way. This game's quite time consuming. So here's me just trying to get that elusive highlands biome, I believe, and I keep getting mountains, and then I realized that I was looking at the wrong thing on the flight engineer readout, and I needed to go a bit further along, and there we go, got the highlands science, perfect. So now we start heading off down towards the little yellow bit at the base of this continent when, boom, disaster strikes. Because as I think there's a fade now. There's me jumping through. Yeah, as we get closer to the edge of this biome, you will notice, boom, in the top left, my signal goes. That's right, we just flew too far away from the KSP, but since the engine was running and that this thing was pointed above the horizon, it just keeps flying. And it flies for nearly like 40 minutes, actually. It got an incredible amount of distance. We flew about something like maybe 300 or 400, 500 kilometers away from the KSP. In that time, it was moving very quickly. But here it is down at about 3,000 kilometers, and now all the way down to 100, about to hit the ocean, and boom! In fact, we hit it so hard that the physics warp freaks out and kicks it back up into the air. And there is the remainder, and there's the sun somehow clipping through Kerbal. But yeah, there's the remainder of the craft, kaput and finished. So here's us back at the KSP now, and I realized that we actually need to step up our game, because a lot of the missions we're being offered are for observations. That is, instead of using pressure scans or temperature scans to get science, we have to take a crew report above or below a certain altitude. So we decide to go ahead and we'll pick up a few of those contracts. Yeah, but look, in the meantime, let me just tell you something right now. I am struggling with a lot of the mods that we had installed, so there will be some changes coming pretty soon. Specifically, not in this episode or the next, but I will in fact be including contract packs, because I've recorded these 2 episodes already, obviously, and I happen to know that the next one does not include these new contract packs, but episode 5, which will be coming out soon, will in fact include the new contract packs, which is a lot more exciting. Some more stuff for us to look at. So here we are in the testing phase of the build, where I've gone and put it sandbox mode, and we're just going to try and build a craft using the parts that we currently own, just to see if we can, to be honest, just to see if we can do it, to see if it is feasible at this point to build such a craft. Here's me using tweak scale to lessen the size of those delta wings, because they were just a bit oversized, and same for that canard I placed on the back. We decided to go with a twin engine setup, using those 2 tiny little Juno engines and a couple, well, I think 4 in total of the Mark 0 fuel tanks. Circular intakes on front, of course, and the little Junos. And we're just moving it all together to get that center of lift just behind the center of mass. Just tweaking things. So here we are throwing on some small landing gear, just making sure that they are in fact not skewed off to the side. When you place them on round objects, they often tend to sort of go a bit squiff. I decided to throw in a service module to include a probe core. I accidentally put the wrong one on though. That's the probe core we do not have access to, so I had to fix that when I made the actual craft. And then just some alkaline fuel cells, just in case our alternators can't keep up with power consumption for whatever reason. So here we are speeding on down the fully upgraded test track in the testing save, and as you can see, the full-blown KSC on the side. I've also decided to try and fly this in, for whatever reason, in IVA mode. That is in the view that the Kerbal sees. You press C, by the way, to cycle between regular camera view and internal view. Now, here's me trying to work out how to retract the landing gear from inside, but there aren't actually any buttons for you to do that at present, so I think I had to go out. Yeah, there we go. And I end up clicking on it there and then going back in. You can also press G, I've since discovered. So here's us banking back, heading back towards the KSC. We're going to come in for a pretty soft landing on the grass there, if I remember correctly. This plane is very stable. I'm very happy with it. If you guys want, I will be including these craft files in the description below, but nothing we've made yet is particularly interesting. So yeah, no, let's not stress about that just yet, because that's a whole mission to set up. So here we go, banking quite sharply, pulling in towards the runway when I realize that there's actually a little bit of a slope next to the runway. So we bank up slightly just to clear it, and then boom, land safely, hit the brakes. Ah, nice. And then I think we end up... Do we take off again? Yes, and this is just a little bit of a glamour shot. This is just to test the reusability of the craft, because I wanted to make sure that it was stable enough to land repeatedly. And here we are coming in again. Just gonna touch down. The trick is to keep the nose just pointed above the horizon and to kind of let gravity suck you down towards it. We bounce up there and up again, and boom, there we go. Managed to make contact with all three wheels, and we are safely on the ground. Perfect. So now I think we just move ourselves a little bit closer to the KSC, take a park, decide, screw it, hop out. And I think we try and hop out. There's a little bit of a glamour shot there. Very cool. So here we are back in the original save. This is our actual playthrough. And we are taking off on our really shitty runway. Not too much of a hassle there. The craft isn't big enough to catch the bumps, I don't think. And we're just quickly going off to do some night missions. Or to get some readings, rather. Unfortunately, it is at night, so you can't really see all that much. I know YouTube's compression software really does squish it all down. But there's me turning on the lights and just making sure I'm not using too much power doing that, but it really was fine. Those alternators on the engines produce more than enough electric charge per second to keep afloat. What's also important to note is that I turn on the fuel cell just in case, but it wasn't necessary. What is also important to note is that when flying and trying to land a plane at night, your small landing gears actually do come with built-in lights, which you will see here when I activate them. I think I press L, there we go, and we can use that to gauge how far away we are from the ground, because I didn't put a Kerbal engineer part on this one, so unfortunately I didn't get those readouts, but there we go, because the altitude meter, the altimeter is often quite inaccurate. In fact, there's a mod for that. I think it's called laser height. Anyway, there's Jebediah hopping out, going for a bit of a jump. He got flung out because that plane wing is clipping into the door, so he just sort of got thrown by the physics engine. Here's me just taking and storing a bunch of science, deploying that ladder to make sure it works, and boom, yes, we can in fact get back into the craft. I just wanted to make sure. So here we hop out again, going for another flight, and yeah, just posing, but our plane decides to roll away with us, so we just quickly put the brakes on, posing for a pretty damn cool thumbnail there, if you ask me. And yeah, so here we go. Back on track, we're heading off another drone mission. I've done about 16 of these in total now, I think. This was the last one. And I decided to just show you guys really quickly some sped up footage of what was crack-a-lackin'. And that is just because, well, it was such a quick mission, it didn't really matter. But there was a quite a hilarious little upset towards the end of this one. Also, you will notice that I have updated the Hercules slightly. I have decided to clip a parachute through the top of the frame there, just in case, to make sure that we always recover these things, because landing them is quite difficult there. They pull up a bit too sharply. But we decide to take a little bit of a daredevil flight right past the KSC, and we pull down in, heading towards the monolith, which is that big black object over there, and boom, bah, right on the ground. Absolutely wrecked. We just bounced up too quickly. Anyway, there's the funds and things we received from that one. Very nice, very good. And yeah. So with that, we have made quite a bit of cash, actually. And I was deciding, hey, well, why the hell not? Why don't we go to orbit? Because we have this contract to test the Mark 1 command pod, as well as the standard orbit Kerbal contract. So we decide to accept them both. And then I believe we head over into the VAB, yebo, and start planning out our craft. So here's me placing down the experimental Mark 1 command pod, and deciding to, I think I put the parachute on first, if I can remember correctly. Sorry, my commentary's not particularly good. I'm trying to remember what I was doing. There we go. And yeah, so that looks pretty good, pretty janky. Not too janky rather. But then I realized, damn it, we don't have the heat shield. That's right, we need the 1.25 meter heat shield in order to effectively, protect ourselves from re-entry heating. So I decided to hop out and go and check out the Research and Development Center to see what it is that we would need. And it turns out that it's under flight control. There it is. But I am unfortunately 8 science shy, or 7.1 science shy of the goal. So we decide to take out the Hercules again, throw on the geography scanner, I want to say. No, I can't remember what the word for it is now. And we just decide to use this guy as a little rover, actually, to zoot on over towards the, it's just me getting the science experiments ready, to zoot on towards the spaceplane hangar and pick up all the science. We were actually going to go all the way around the KSP, but, I ended up flipping it over like an idiot, so we don't get that science. But we still managed to collect enough to push us through and get the next node. For those of you that don't know, you can actually use the KSP, each building is its own biome technically, and they all give you the same amount of science, which is nice. So here we go, you can see we get a gyroscope for our sounding rockets, as well as the heat shield and some various orbital maneuvering parts, and radial parachutes, which is very nice. So we don't have to attach them on top anymore, even though I think we do either way for this particular build. Yeah, there we go. So there's me slapping on the battery, changing my mind, putting it on top, and yeah, we're just going to quickly go through the build process here. So as you can see, I am experimenting with my upper stage. That is a stage that is actually going to achieve orbital velocity. You generally want this stage to be smaller and more lightweight than the rest of your rocket, because the more weight you carry up with you, the more you have to push into orbit. And it is a lot easier to exercise your delta V change when you're in orbit, but it is it is very difficult to get all that weight up there. So often a good idea is to just pick a smaller payload and make multiple launches, especially if you can make your rockets reusable, which will be a goal, of course, for this playthrough. So there we are, using a solid rocket motor at the bottom as our first stage. This turns out not actually to be that great of an idea. It doesn't really have the kick we need, but there's me just throwing in some extra components, fitting up the top there so it's a bit more streamlined, throwing on a larger fuel tank, and of course making the fins smaller. And yeah, pretty happy with that. So we decide, I think we're getting a total, I can't see in the preview mirror on the editor because it's in half resolution, but I think we get around 3,500 meters per second of delta V from this particular configuration. That pushes us all the way to 4, but our thrust to weight ratio is dismally low. So I throw on a couple of extra little liquid fuel rockets, or liquid fuel rocket motors, tiny little radial ones, and we decide to call that good, I think. Just putting on a larger antenna to ensure that when we fly further away we're not stuck, and I call this craft the Antilles 1. And here we are about to hit launch, going straight up, and right off the bat, physics starts to get a bit weird, and I start getting a little bit of a wobble, as you saw there. But that's easily fixed by disabling SAS. I think that's because the reaction wheel at the top was trying to keep it straight, but the whole rocket wanted to wobble because it was not aerodynamically stable with that gap in between the second and first stages over there. So, or first, second, and third stages there, rather, sorry. So there's me deploying the antenna as we get above 55 kilometers. It's there the atmosphere is thin enough that it won't damage it. We jettison the second stage and fire up those small little engines, hoping to get orbit, but we don't quite have the punch or the required delta V to make it. So this craft just doesn't have what it takes, unfortunately. I did, however, get some, science from it, crew reports and things, Jebediah just spamming them out there, and, we're all very thankful to him for it, giving us juicy information about what it's like to be in a tiny capsule above Kerbal. Very cool. So here we go, plummeting back to the surface at quite a serious pace, and I very stupidly moved the slider for the parachute in the wrong direction, and I killed Jebediah. He's dead. I am sorry. So, with that failed, we decide, thankfully we still have a spare pilot, Valentina, but we decide we need to revisit this design. It just doesn't work. So I throw down a couple of large fuel tanks, as well as a Reliant engine, and some maneuverable canards for, atmospheric control. And yeah, we decide that this gives us a bit more punch. In fact, it pushes us all the way up to 4,300 meters per second of delta V. We also put some more rocket motors on that one to give a bit more thrust so that when we are trying to achieve orbit, we don't have to fight gravity as much. We can just push into our prograde vector. Here we are launching right off the pad, sorry. And yeah, it's pretty average launch by all accounts, really. Everything goes to form. As you can see, we're getting a bit of wobble again, and again, I think this is because of the reaction wheel I placed in there, pushing back against the rocket. They're seemingly a bit overpowered. I'm not sure about that. Here's me just taking some glamour shots, some pretty thumbnail potentials. Always good. You'll probably recognize them if they're in there. There's us jettisoning the first stage onto the second one now, and as you can see, we are just plummeting through that fuel, but we have pushed our apoapsis up above 70 kilometers, and that is good enough to get out of the atmosphere. So now we are just elongating our ascent a little bit, just pushing that prograde vector a little bit long, throwing some more velocity into our horizontal vector, and there we go, moving forward a little bit, and firing up the rockets again, just to push our periapsis out from underneath and within Kerbal, and boom, there we go, into orbit. And that's it, we've effectively in orbit. We ran the test on the craft, and yeah, pretty much collected the 33,000 science or so that was attached to it. So now we decide, I checked the life support mod, and it didn't seem to be functioning, which is a bit worrying. So now we decide to flip our craft around, and fire prograde right over the deserts, and this was intended to bring us down over the KSC, but I didn't fire for long enough for some reason. I just didn't. I don't know why, and there's me overshooting it completely, firing up the engines just so we don't land too far away. The further away you land from the KFC, the more money you lose, unfortunately. So yeah, Valentina is quite the daredevil, though. She enters in quite a steep angle and experiences almost 10 Gs of force, or 8 Gs of force rather, which is quite a lot for a little Kerbal. Anyway, there's us, deploying the parachute well above sea level this time, which is a little bit better for, health and safety reasons, and just collecting some more science, the various crew reports and things, and hopping back to the KSC. Okay, with 51 science in the bank, we are actually pretty well off as far as science is concerned at present. So we decide to hop inside the space center there, and yeah, we're gonna push, I think, for the science expanded tree, the basic science tree. That gives us the science containers, which are the next sort of major gain you get in science retrieval, as well as the relay antenna, and then of course access to all the life support parts should we need them. Not really doing long distance manned missions just yet, so that's not a problem. Or even woman missions, I suppose. And here's me just looking around at the various tech nodes. I think I'm definitely going to push for the aviation one next. That is simply because I'm quite a fan of SSTOs, that is single stage to orbits, which are quite easy to make out of aeroplanes, especially if you can get them with sort of the more hybrid engines that can get high altitude flight. And you can sort of launch rockets off them and things. It's just a reusable launch platform, basically, to bring down the costs. And since we're only receiving 60% science, it's worth it. Please let me know if you guys prefer the post-commentary or the live commentary videos. Post-commentary videos, I can get through a lot more content a lot faster, so that we can do a lot of things, and some things will just have to be post-commentary out of necessity, but a lot of the earlier missions we really can just do live. So yeah, you guys let me know what you want. The next episode will be post-commentary because I'm doing it now, but after that I will take your suggestions to heart. Thank you very much, everybody. I hope you enjoyed. See you in the next one. Cheers.